Cool. All right. So only because of time, we're going to move on to another aspect, if we can, just to permit, just to see if we can get deeper into this conversation. So, and then this again, I'm framing this question about the late great master teacher, Kevin Samuels. However, it does extend to those who fit into that category of critiquing, questioning, holding to account women in general, or Black women in particular, right? So if you're a person that questions the kind of ideals of feminism or the operationalism of gender politics in the public domain, you too may face this question. But if you wanted to substantiate, if somebody were attempting to substantiate, or could use your feed your imagination, what would make somebody believe that Kevin was a misogynist? How would they substantiate it? What even could allude to even an argument of some sort that this man was a misogynist in general and he had a particular hatred for Black women?
See, this again is another misnomer, it's another lie. Oh, by the way, that woman was Gloria Steinem, the white woman who infiltrated the Black community and was the first to bring feminism and ghostwrite a book by a Black feminist author, which initially in the 70s said why Black women don't need men, and tried to link the struggle of white women with as a woman of the issue of civil rights as an issue of women. So it was an issue of Black men and Black women together fighting for civil rights. It was Black women and white women should fight together on the basis of their gender.
So Black women and white women holding hands together and fighting the evil of patriarchy.
Yeah, that was the issue with the patriarchy, not Black men and white women. And imagine, so prior to the civil rights movement or the human rights movement, white women never came with that. They didn't see Black women as their sisters. They had them as maids. If you look at all these films like Riding Miss Daisy, all these other films where the Black woman
the maid, the butler, the 12 Years a Slave, and then the sequel, 13 Years a Slave, and then the final 14 years. All of those films. There was no feminism. There was no feminism between the Black woman and the white woman.
Gloria Steinem, if you check her out, Gloria Steinem, she got a book called My Life on the Road, in which she discusses her life. But people now know she was a CIA agent. She was sent into the Black community to put poison feminism in our community, and now we see the results. Now, answering your point,
okay,
why would they call him this? Kevin was only, again, a Black woman for years. I Don't Want No Scrubs. These were records that came out. I Don't Want No Scrubs, TLC. Records about Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent. Records about Go On, the Door, I Don't Need You, I Will Survive. So for all these 70s or 80s R&B records coming out, who's gonna pay my bills, pay my telephone bills? So all these records was coming out, in which they was putting down Black men specifically, saying Black men.
Are you suggesting, bro, that the art form, the popular culture, the movies like Waiting to Excel or the color purplification, as to use Kevin's phrase, are you saying that these are art forms that was used to decimate the image of the Black man in America? Is that what you're suggesting? That they were alluding to the inferiority or deprecation of Black men and their ability to be integral human beings?
If you want to destroy a race, you could go for the woman. The Bible talks about the Shaitan or the devil going for the woman to bring Adam down. In the Bible, it talks also, and also in the Quran, about the children of Israel being enslaved by the Egyptians, and they would kill the men and spare the women. So in slavery is what the white man did. He would rape the Black woman to produce more and more people that resembled him. Or this is why we like this thing of lighter skin and dark skin. The more we look like our enemy, we feel that so-called Black person is more acceptable. So he knew that if you go for the woman, what he would do. So these were these records when they came out. He promoted, he pushed them. And it caused division in the Black community. And yes, even though Black women have been strong through slavery history, we know that. We won't capture the slaves. We were made into slaves by the white man. Like James Baldwin said, that the N-word was created. James Baldwin said, I ain't no N-word. That's white people created that word. That's your thing, isn't it? Why did we need to create that word? That's what's more important. Nobody could think about, like, what psychologically went on for you to create that word, that being based on that word. So that creation, that invention of the Uncle Tom the Coon, that's a white invention that white people need to feel good about themselves, right? And then they put poison in the black community so they can feel good about, because it's to denigrate the black man because of the fear of the black planet. So Kevin, all he did was he took terms that black woman would say to him, I want a 6 foot tall man with a 6-pack who makes 6 figures. I ain't dating no man, but that's in the records, that's in the film industry, that's all on the TV, that was promoted. So them little guy, people who didn't measure up to that, the black woman said, we're not going to spread our seed with those type of men. So Kevin basically just held women accountable for what they want.
Although the evidence would suggest that that's not true, that's actually not true in practice, because as much as there's an idea that, and of lately, in the last few years, probably since lockdown, I've not heard that word high value man used so much in my life since lockdown, since like I started to listen to a bit more of the manosphere. Everybody's talking about high value man, but however, in the UK, as much as they will know in the diaspora of America, or even, for example, in the Caribbean, that a lot of women, they ain't just having babies with high value men. That we've got what's the word I'm looking for? A syndrome, we might as well say, of like a small group of men or populace of men or archetype of men who impregnate a lot of women. This idea of marry before you carry, right, is gone in large portions of our community. Marry before you carry. It's almost like you're blaming the single moms. You're attacking women. You are a misogynist. And if you bring it up in the context of black women, then that's even worse, because then that means you hate your own mama. You know what I mean? Or you've got some kind of psychological self-deprecating idea that you're suppressing some sort of self-hatred, and you're acting out by saying, for example, it would be better to marry and bring up your child in a marital home that statistically it gives them a better chance than doing otherwise. Just mentioning that is a form of hatred, as opposed to saying, hey, maybe it's an analysis and maybe it's just a bit of advice. Maybe it's just pushing an idea that might be good for the people, might be good for our people. What say you?
No, I would agree. The data is in. The numbers have been crunched. The metadata shows unreservedly.
I've read the research.
You did the research. Obviously, research. Clearly, you know what you're talking about, and obviously, this is a field that you've done a lot of pondering and looking over and contemplating over and coming up with solutions over. Hence, why we're having this discussion. And clearly, you can see that, as you just said, quoting that statistic, children do better in a married environment. Women, the more sexual partners a woman has, the less she's decreased in the sexual value marketplace. She decreases it. So statistics prove that 80% of marriages survive with a woman is a virgin on marriage. Mm-hmm. The more partners she has, the less her marriage is likely to survive. The more porn a woman watches, or the more a woman is open to sexual promiscuity, not only devalues her as a human being, but it also devalues her in the sexual marketplace. And the older she gets, the walls you're going to hit the wall. So the reality is that there's a biological clock on women that men don't have. Women produce 1 egg a month. They're fertile for reproduction, to reproduce once a month. A man has over, in one ejaculation, over 1 million spermatozoas. So he's constantly producing sperm, which he has to release, has to come out of his body. The woman's eggs comes out because naturally for it to come out. The statistics have also proved that prostate cancer can be avoided by regular sex from the man or release of the sperm. It's the buildup of the sperm in the man's scrotum that is not being released, and so it's not coming out. So these dead ones are just hanging around. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a biologist, but from what the little I have read, that in terms of, this is a recent study into prostate cancer, it says regular sex is good for the man. Now, if a man's but if women are with men withholding sex or using sex as a weapon or talking about the size of the man's member, and the first thing women do is saw your member small. This is what Kevin was. Why men took and flocked to Kevin, because it's the first time somebody was giving them a voice behind this. The manosphere was already there. It was all over people doing something similar to what he was doing, but no one was able to focus it. No one was able to look good as he was, be as articulate as he was, and be as demanding on the woman that called in for accountability as he was. It was the first time a man was actually standing up and making women accountable And a lot of women liked him. More women liked him than they hated him. But the few women that didn't like him were women that were messed up anyway, and women that had an overinflated self-sense.
Well, let me jump in there. Because you said something really interesting, right? And I'm just making a parallel, right, as an analogy. You said that Kevin Samuels did not create the manosphere, did not even create those talking points, but he came with an almost like saying, I'm paraphrasing you now, a kind of unique analysis and a dynamic way of challenging and holding women accountable and holding men accountable also, but a kind of unique way. And so obviously his thing popped, in it, his thing blew. And I'm thinking of Sigmund Freud, because Sigmund Freud in the Western world, right, just as a way of analogy, right? Kevin was not a psychologist or a clinical doctor or anything like that, right? But Sigmund Freud did not create psychoanalysis, did not create psychotherapy, but he came with a certain, a certain commentary, a certain approach, a certain methodology that made his thing pop or his thing stand out. And that history will tell you that he's a father of why he didn't create it, because sometimes people are just able to, I don't know, speak to something in that moment that kind of captures a public's imagination, whether it's the academic circles or whether in this case it's just social media, right? It's not no academics as such, right? But just bringing it in line with the idea of, let me see, how can I put this? Like put this in line with challenging. So is this idea of challenging? I want to bring this idea of marry before you carry, a marriage and things like that. This is how we register things. This is how we measure things. This idea of marriage, and this is stability, and this is about bringing families together. If you're a person that promotes marriage, that sounds like you're trying to make women safe. Women are safer in a marriage. Children are safer in a marriage. So that doesn't sound like a hate monger and a misogynist, but somehow his talking points in this intersectionality or this, in this kind of era of the left or the far left.
Yeah.
Do you think it's? Do you think? All right. Let me put it this way. Do you think his arguments were too almost Black Republican or somewhat right wing? And I don't mean right wing as in racist right wing. I mean conservatives. It's mostly conservative.
I would say that we cannot underestimate the tsunami of the destruction of the cancel culture, which is coming from a post-modernist, post-feminist, intersectionality, Marxist perspective.
Neo-Marxism.
Neo-Marxism, and it's not just about people with students with blue hair and some.
So is it beyond students with funny colored hair?
Beyond students with funny colored hair. It's insidious. It's permeating every facet of our community, and there's a backlash because if, for example, in America, if Hillary had cozied up to the leftist radical wing and abandoned the working class, the white and working class men, she would have been in power. But she threw them over and called them, what is it, despicables, or the group of despicables, whatever she called them. So the idea was that a lot of this trendy left-wing support was what they wanted to put in the Black community. So the idea to have a Black conservative, a Black Republican is anathema, because some of our Blacks are supposed to be homogeneous and all support the gay, the freak, the weak, and everybody else on the left. Whereas with Kevin, he was like, no, he likes capitalism, he likes money, he likes looking good, likes smelling good. He became the archetype for all the women, what they wanted. Now, I know you've got your own view, which is a high quality man, whereas Kevin obviously had
high caliber. No, my theory is a high caliber. That's what we talk about, integrity and accountability and some other things as well, which hopefully we can get into on another day. But yes.
Another day, yeah. So I think that Kevin was saying to Black women, if you don't want to be in the situations where you're having, marry before you carry. This whole talk now in America about Roe versus Wade, and what we're getting again, the same old stories. Oh, it's going to go back to underground abortions. Women are going to be on the floor dying and bleeding because they're not going to be allowed to have an abortion. So you want to, so what do you do when you terminate a human in you then? You know what I mean? Up until it's born, you can do it now. So nobody, when they get pregnant, says I'm having a group of cells. Nobody get pregnant says I'm having, I'm having a fetus. You all say, oh my gosh, I'm having a baby. I don't want this baby. Because it's a person, it's a human being. And if you say it's a clump of cells when it's at, I don't know, a couple of weeks old, I'm a clump of cells now at my age. What was a clump of cells? An embryo is not a toddler, an infant and a toddler is still a child. What you would have called whatever, he's still a child. So Kevin would say, black men, you need to be responsible for who you deposit your sperm into and who you give the power of your life, your destiny over, because you just look after the child until it's 18 years. So strap up if you need to. And black women be accountable for opening your legs.
King. Only because of time, yeah, I'm going to say, let's stick a pause there right now because the high caliber man frequency's just gone up. We're going to come back on another side with another line of arguments. But I really thank you for your analysis. And I hope to speak with you at another day or at another time where we can even go deeper because you raised some potent issues there. But thank you for listening. And we hope that these words have been of some way informative, inspirational, or even thought-provoking. Until next time. The High Caliber One podcast with Hugh Mayers, my guest,